Okay, can everyone see my screen? You should see a big thing that says building your sales process and the power of micro commitments. Give me a yes, give me a no. Might not be showing it yet. No. Okay, no worries. Cool, there we go. All right, so micro commitments. I think, when last week we had Kenton, and he was talking about how he closed a $10,000 a month client, which is cool. But what's even cooler is the rev share deal that he built into it, which is going to be like the payout on that's going to be like 50K plus. If he gets his ducks in a row. I mean, he started with identity resolution. I'm going to go for some other stuff and B2B and things like that. So it's pretty amazing. Now, a lot of people ask me, like, they're like, oh, how are people closing such high ticket deals? How are they closing 10K? How are they closing 5K? How are they even closing 3K on a call? And before I started a data company, when I was doing like agency stuff, like at the very beginning, I always thought that people were just really, really good at sales. I always thought that when someone was doing a sales call, they just had this amazing pitch and there was this hidden technique or this hidden deck. Went through every sales script, the Sam Ovens silence, all that stuff. You don't know what the Sam Ovens silence is, basically just revealing the price and then just being silent for like 2 minutes until it's awkward as hell. And then the client says something. And anyway, it doesn't have to be like that, because everything is actually a process. And when I started learning about these things called micro commitments, I realized that one big sale is actually just a huge group of micro commitments that you collect over a sales process. What's really cool about this is so many businesses, so many people are like, oh, I need to close. I can't close. I suck at closing, things like that, right? And they bring a sales guy in. But when you have this process dialed in and you're able to measure it and optimize it, you're able to essentially build a very scalable sales system. And if you look at, you see, oh, they didn't get the sale, you can actually look back and you can see exactly why you didn't land the sale. It's extremely optimized. In fact, I created this, which I'm going to start sharing with a few people on the workshop that you guys do with Ray and sales, and show you, how you can actually track what you're doing, right? Now, some people are going to fill this in every day. Some people, maybe they'll fill it in every few days. Some people won't fill it in at all. That's okay. I'm still going to share it. And the point is that you're able to understand why you're getting certain results, and then how to, optimize each micro commitment. Okay. So, who's familiar with this method here? Right. So add, content, conversation, call. That's what everybody says, right? Everyone says you start off by, maybe it's a cold outreach, something like that. You have the conversation, they do the call. Okay. Like they treat it as like this 3-step process. Sales funnels is like they book a call, blah, blah, so forth. It's like, this is so simple and there's so much that can get muddled up between these parts. And that's why people don't get sales, right? So was it the call or the messaging? Did you push too hard or not enough? Was the prospect even a good fit? There's so many variables. So what we've done is we've mapped them out into 6 micro commitments, right? And these are tried and true in terms of, like, we've been using these for over 3 years now, and this is how we optimize our entire sales process. We're not as diligent in terms of, we don't fill this out every single day. We used to, but we don't really anymore because now we just know what to look for. But once you get this, maybe you can start off filling it every single day. Maybe you can start filling it every single week. The point is just understand each micro commitment and what goes into it. Okay. So you've got engagement, new frame, CTA, homework, alignment, and close. So engagement is, did they engage with a knowledge gap? I spoke about EcoScript a few weeks ago, and I talked about how when you are engaging a prospect, true engagement is open through a knowledge gap, which is basically giving them a gap in knowledge they didn't have before. That's really what it is, right? The new frame I spoke about, when you're able to assess a situation and then pump up, and give them a frame. A frame consists of 4 parts. It's asking permission. It's saying, well, here's the real problem that I think is going on. It's saying, here's the, the knowledge gap in terms of how we're fixing it. And then it's saying, here's where most people go wrong, right? And then, CTA in there. So there's like 4 elements of the frame. The CTA, did they book an appointment, right? Simple enough. Did they book appointment on your calendar? Then there's homework. Did they go through the homework? When you get on the call, did they go through what you sent them? Usually it's going to be, some went through like a minute of it. Others maybe went through all of it. We're like, I'm ready to close right now. It entirely depends on the homework. Then you've got alignment and then the close. And every single one of these can be optimized. Okay. So the biggest mistake people make is they think that one call does all the work and they think they need to hire this absolute sales gun, right? Maybe if you are doing something that doesn't really have a trackable ROI, like a fitness product or something like that, you might need, you know, more emotional driven sales approach. But with this, really micro commitments is all you need. Okay. So we're going to collect feedback faster doing this. And what's cool is that allows us to optimize our process. So, you know, how frustrating is it when you just don't know why you're not closing, right? You like did everything right, got on the prospect, wasn't a fit, I have no idea. The process of micro commitments allows you to get a quicker feedback loop and you can see exactly what's not working. So at least 4 of these micro commitments happen before the call even takes place. All right, before the closing call. So there may be a triage call in between. Okay, so these are 6 micro commitments. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and show you how you can optimize each one, troubleshoot each one, why certain things may occur, and then how to fix them. All right. Is everyone still with me? It's pretty quiet in the chat. Let me know. It's making sense. Tell me to go through, rehash some stuff. Cool, cool. All right. So let's start with this, right? Constant rejections, and I'll think about it. Right? Like, oh, I'll think about it. Oh, yeah. All right. It's just on a priority right now. Let's follow back in the new year. That's my favorite one. You know, that's what you get, particularly this time of year, or anything where there's like maybe 6 months at least. People are like, oh, let's follow up in the new year, right? This is 100% based on the frame because you didn't assign a good enough frame, right? If you're getting this objection, you're getting people say that I'll think about it, and you're not getting a really solid yes or no. It's 100% because you didn't assign the frame correctly, right? So what that means is you haven't been able to explain the real problem, and then you haven't been able to put in a knowledge gap that gets them interested to be like, wow, okay, they can actually solve that problem. And usually what that means is you haven't asked the right questions. You don't know enough about the prospect, so you haven't assessed enough as well. So it's 100% in the new frame. You need to look at what was the frame that you assigned them and did they resonate, right? And you can see if they accepted a frame because they'll be like, that makes total sense. Can I give an example? So an example of a frame, talking to prospect. Actually, let me go through the eco scripts. Example of a frame would be, where are we? I'll do a quick example. So I'm speaking with a prospect and, you know, I find out that they spending a ton of money on ads, but I find that their, you know, conversion rate is really low, right? So spending a ton on ads and the conversion rate is really low. And then I say, okay, well, there's a way that we can actually do some reactivation for them so they can make a lot of money back, right? So the frame that I assigned to them is to say, hey, look, sounds like the real problem here is that it doesn't matter how much you spend on the front end. It doesn't matter how good your ROAS is. You're actually still losing about 70, 80% of your traffic, right? What we do is we're able to reactivate that using a pixel, and then it's going to basically get you sales without lifting a finger. We're just going to add on to what you're doing. You don't have to change anything, swap anything around, right? And you say where most people go wrong is they just focus on the front end. They just try to get ROAS profitable. All you're going to do is try this game and see if you can lower CPM, which is just getting harder and harder and harder. Whereas when you have this back end system, you're able to, you know, just do what you're doing now and you'd actually make double. Does that make sense? And if they say, holy shit, yeah, that makes total sense. I dig that. How do I do that? They've accepted the frame. If they say no, if they're like, no, that doesn't make sense at all, then that usually means they didn't accept the frame. It means that, no, something was up there. Maybe you didn't get the problem right. Maybe you didn't explain the knowledge gap right. Maybe it was something where it was like you were too detailed, right? You were too complex. So assigning the frame basically means listening to them and what they say, and then being like, hey, here's the real problem that is going on. Here's how I usually solve it using a knowledge gap or a one-liner. Here is what, sorry about it. So yeah, permission, and then here's where the real thing, here's the real problem, here's where most people go wrong. Knowledge gap, here's how I solve it, right? So that's the frame. So constant no-shows, right? I think in the yeah, you can. I just put a copy of the slides in school. I'll show you where you can get them at the end as well. If they don't show up to the call, it's usually down to the homework. Like if you've assigned the frame and it's super, super good, right? If they're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. I didn't realize that. That's insane, blah, blah. Then it comes down to the homework. Now it's either too long, too convoluted. Maybe you're putting too much thought into it where it's like, they're just like, they're not going to watch it. The best homework is literally just being like, all right, this is what you say. So before the call, you say, look, I want this call to be to the point. I want to be able to make sure I tailor it as much as possible. I know you're going to ask me about case studies, how this has worked, things like that. Is there anything I can send before the call? And I'll just do a quick loom this afternoon so that you can check it out so that when we get into our call, we just get straight into the nitty gritty and I can discuss pricing and really tailor things for you, right? That opening line there, that works super well. That's all we need to do in terms of homework. And what's cool is once you've done that once, you can save that and you can keep it. So they're like, hey, look, so I actually had a call with somebody a few weeks ago that had a similar situation. I'm going to send you the loom that I made them, if that's okay, and show you basically some case studies, just how it works, etc. Right? That's homework. Homework doesn't have to be anything intense. Homework just needs to be some kind of proof of why they should trust you. That's really what homework is. And actually what I find is a lot of people don't even go through the homework, but the presence of it being there, they might get through a couple of seconds. It's enough for them to be like, okay, no, that makes sense. They go to the next call. One thing that happens quite a lot, you get on a call, right? Someone shows up because you sent them the homework. So they're like, well, they did all this work for me. I may as well show up to the call, right? When really you just send them a loom. And you're like, hey, did you check out what I sent you? And they say, no, I looked through like 5 seconds and then my kid fell off his chair and then I had to run out and blah, blah, blah. That's what happens in the real world, right? Not a lot of people usually watch this stuff. The people that do are awesome, but a lot of people don't. What you then do is instead of being like, all right, let me resend it to you, you say, look, that's totally fine. I'll just give you a quick recap. The first thing I sent you was this, then I sent you this, then I sent you this, then I sent you this, right? And then you can just kind of recap it for them. That works super, super well because it positions you as the authority. And honestly, when people are like, hey, can I see a case study? Can I see this? Can I see how you worked with this guy? Usually they don't even know what they're looking for. We usually call this you can, it's basically like a test that people do, a little tick, little box that they're just trying to tick in their head that they did their due diligence. So they mainly just do that so they think they did the right thing. But usually, as long as you can tick one or few of those boxes and just show the presence of the case studies there and just give an overview, that's going to be enough. I'm not saying that, case studies aren't effective. I'm just saying that usually when somebody asks for case studies, you don't have to give them a whole deck. You really just need to show one use case and just a simple overview on a one-liner of exactly how it worked, because then they can tick that box in their head. And that's the presence of homework. One thing that I find really interesting that I'm just going to quickly go through with the homework stuff is when I went through here, let me see. Oh, now I get the eco stuff. I'll have to go through it later. But essentially, we'll come back to it later. Essentially, there's so many ways that you can create social proof, right? There's something that I have, it's in here, I can't find it right now, but basically there's different ways. There's positive and there's negative, right? So an example of homework could actually be you running just a forecast. You saying, hey, look, if we do this, we could do this, and if you do this, you do this. That could be it, right? Homework could be you just sharing the dashboard and showing what you did for another client or an audience that you built. Homework could be a negative, okay? So it could be using one of the forecasts in terms of showing how much traffic they could be losing, right? It doesn't have to be a crazy in-depth walkthrough with the name, number, email, social security number of every client you've worked with. It really just needs to be one thing that they're able to tick that box in their head and be like, okay, this is legit. Because ultimately, the only way they're going to trust you is if they actually work with you and see results. That's really what it comes down to. Okay, so that's what when somebody says and they're not showing up to the call, it's always down to the homework. It's the thing that you send them, they didn't watch it, or just you didn't put an effort to send them something where they're actually going to show up to the call. And that's why people usually don't show up. Now, I'll pass, they just don't want to do it. It's often better to get a firm no than get a maybe or I'll think about it, because I'll think about it means that something was wrong in the sales process from the engagement in the new frame, something like that, or they just weren't a good fit. When they say no, it usually is just going to come down to finances, or maybe they just don't think it's that good, which means that there's still something wrong with the new frame. So when they say I'll pass, right, and it doesn't have anything to do with finances, it's really the frame and the alignment. So basically, you didn't assign the frame to make it where it's like, it's important to them, really, is the biggest thing. Like, you didn't create a knowledge gap and you didn't create angst. That's the biggest thing. And then if the frame was amazing, they were speaking to you and they're like, oh, this is amazing. I need to get on this now. I'm going to call my CEO, or, okay, can we do the call earlier? And then they still say no. That's alignment, right? Alignment on their goals. And I'll go into what that is. So no response. So the start of the process, you send out a message to someone, hey, Brad, it's so great to connect. Crickets, it doesn't say anything. No response. That means you didn't have a knowledge gap to engage them with. So you didn't know enough about them. You didn't have something that they needed, right? I often talk about this, but they ran a study. I've got the slide here somewhere, but I'm just going to summarize it right now. So they actually ran a study to see whether people would pay for answers to a trivia night, even though they would get the answers at the end, right? They were trying to see how can we get people so triggered by this where they'd actually pay for the answers on for trivia. Okay. And what they found is what got people to actually pay is not the thing that they had no idea about. So like when they asked a question and it was completely different to, they had no fighting chance of being like, I don't know the answer to that question. They didn't really care. If it was, extremely close, like it was easy and obviously they knew the answer, so it didn't matter, right? So if it was completely like opposite of the field and it's something they just had no idea about, they wouldn't want to pay for the answer. And it was something they already knew, obviously they didn't want to pay for the answer. What got people to pay for the answer is when they knew just enough about it, but had maybe like 10% of it was missing, right? They were like, oh, I know it's somewhere city. I know this one. They feel like I know it, but there was just that tiny little gap of knowledge missing. That is what people actually paid to get the answer to, even though they got it at the end. So what that means is when you are pitching something, if you're able to say like, here's the biggest challenge you have, here's what you're doing, but there's just that tiny little bit missing. If you're able to do that effectively in your marketing, you're able to do that effectively on the LinkedIn bio and everything else, that's how you're going to get people just angrily like hitting you up. You're like, what do you know that I don't? Right? And that's what you can build through a knowledge gap. Is it better to text them the link of the homework or send it through email? You could do both. Just send it through email and then send them a text. Okay. So let's have a look at this. So frame was never assigned for given the so you give a free resource, book appointments, and no one replies. All right. So this comes down to, let's say, for an example, you've got this amazing thing. You put out a post of a case study, 50 people comment. You message all those people. They're like, yeah, sounds good. But no one really progresses to the next stage. You get interest, but it kind of just fizzles out, doesn't go anywhere. Okay. This comes down to the frame. If you didn't assign the frame, no one's going to want to proceed to the next step. Okay. So this is just a few of the reasons why these things occur. Now, to just give a recap, you've got engagement. So the knowledge gap and creating real engagement from someone. You got the new frame. Okay. Is the prospect accepting the new frame that you assigned to them? So, You ask permission, said, here's the real problem. Here's the knowledge gap that we have that how we solve it that other people don't really know about. Here's where most people go wrong by continuing to do what you're doing. Does that make sense? That's the frame. Call to action is just a firm like, okay, cool. Well, can we hop on a call? Like, and I can show you how to fix this. Homework is giving them just something to look over before the call. Homework doesn't have to be in depth. You don't have to send them like a freaking worksheet or something. Homework can literally just be, okay, cool. I got this page on my website. Check it out. And then we'll hop on the call, right? It just has to be something to show that you're legit and you've just put in that effort. Now, the best homework, like I said, is to do a loom. Is literally, if you haven't created anything for the prospect, all you have to say is, hey, on this call tomorrow, I want to get straight to the point. I'm sure you're going to want to know case studies, things like that, but I want to tailor it to you. What can I record today that would just give you that information so that, we can use the 30 minutes we have to just really tailor things? And they'll tell you, they'll be like, oh, I just want to know, or they might be like, oh, I just want to see all your case studies. So that's when you ask a little bit more into it and you say, okay, what case studies do you want to see? And they're like, oh, just, Fortune 500 brands you work with. And you're like, okay, what do you want to see that I did for those brands? Is it, the email? Is it the pixel match rate? Is it, and they'll start to tell you more specifics and then you can just tie them down to that one little thing. And then you can record a loom of that and you can give a scenario or you can give a forecast or you can pull some case studies from our deck. And that's how you can do the homework. Alignment. I haven't talked too much about alignment, but really alignment is just like a temp check, right? So you hop on the call, you get them with a prospect, you're like, did you go through the homework? They're like, yeah, it was great. The alignment part is really just making sure that this is a priority and they want to fix it. So that's really comes down to, I think Ray will go for more of like sales script in terms of the actual sales of what you want to say. But really the framework of this is they've gone through that, you've assigned the frame, they've booked a call, they've watched the homework, and you say, okay, cool. So, is this something that you're looking to do right now? Is this something for the future? Is there anything else that I need to answer for you, right? Other than financials? Like, we'll get to the payment part, but is there anything else I need to answer for you? This is just saying, is there any kind of objections they would have other than financial objections? Because the close really is just a negotiation, right? Like, I'm just going to put neg here. Because when you're closing someone and you've gone through all these steps correctly, this is really just, how does this make sense financially, right? It's a negotiation at that point. It's like they're happy with everything. It's either too much or, they want to do a payment plan or something like that. I mean, there's so many things you can do in terms of like discussing finances. We have a whole section, I'm not sure if it's been added yet, on discussing finances. Like, honestly, if I was to take I had maybe 30 minutes a day to be able to train a closer that was going to close all our deals for the next month, and he was completely green, and I had 30 minutes that I could just teach him something every single day, I wouldn't teach tonality. I wouldn't teach, probably wouldn't even teach the knowledge gap, even though it's so powerful. The biggest thing I would teach if I just had 30 minutes a day would be how to discuss finances. If you can discuss finances and you can make it so it's not icky and it's not like, ooh, then that's how you close a deal, right? Like, if you're able to see, okay, this is going to make sense financially, this is not going to make sense financially, and then actually come up with, creative ways where you can accept payment, you can do payment plan. If you're able to just discuss finances, that's one of the biggest things that's going to get you the sale. Okay. So that is micro commitments. Now, I've set this up here. And I'm going to share this, and it's up to you if you want to be able to put it in. But an example would be, okay, so touch points, which is engagement. So that could be sending out LinkedIn requests. That could be just messaging people. That could be conversations you're having, right? So let's say I'm sending out like 100 LinkedIn requests every single day. Okay. And then I see, okay, well, only 10 of these people have replied. Okay. So I've got 10 conversations going. I start going through and I assign a frame, and then I'm able to get like 7 people. They're like, oh my gosh, that makes total sense. And then from there, let's say 6 people booked, right? 1 fell off. I run my appointments. I see that 5 of them show up. Okay. And then out of, the 5, I find that only 3 of them, I really want to make the offer. So that means, like, in terms of the temp check that I did, They're like, I don't really need to do this right now. Let's follow back end of the year. Out of that, I close 2. Okay. So then we can see what is making the most sense here. All right. And we can see what you want to focus on. Now, what's cool is when you look at the KPIs, you can see if it's under a certain amount, what it means. And I'm going to finesse these a little bit. That's why I haven't released this yet in terms of what I think constitutes a good close rate, what I think constitutes a good frame acceptance rate, because it can differ. Really, it's something that I think you have to like decide yourself, but I'll give what we currently use. And then it comes down to engagement. This is how you fix your engagement. This is how you frame acceptance rate. You didn't acknowledge their main problem. Maybe you didn't understand the real problem. Did you ask permission before setting the frame? Booking rate, what was your knowledge gap? Show up rate, did you provide the homework? Was there immediate CTA? Did you temp check? Qualification level, what was sophistication level of the prospect? Was there qualification questions? And then your temp check and your close rate and financial objections. Okay, this gives you everything you need to be able to do the 6 micro commitments that lead to a big sale. All right, I'm going to allow some questions. Everybody following this? All right. You guys are quiet today. So no one's following this? No one's got any questions? Following, wheels turning. Good, good. Just got here. Cool, cool. All right. As you guys know, every workshop, I do a 1 out of 5. 1, if you just have no idea and you're like, I need to go for this whole thing again. This makes no sense. Whereas 5 being like, I can take this and run with it. This makes total sense. Cool, cool. Okay, 3, 4. Came late. That's all right. I'll be recording. In an initial outreach on LinkedIn, is getting them on email, then present email still the best? So when you get someone on email, you just want to get I think if I'm understanding that correctly, are you saying that like getting them on email, then present on email is the best? So when you say present on email, I'm assuming you mean just book a call and then get them on that call and show them on the call, right? Or are you saying actually like send them the homework and stuff via email? Yeah, I mean, honestly, like email and stuff like that, if you send over the homework, I would just send a text to make sure they've actually watched it. And if they haven't watched it, you're already ahead on the call because you're like, hey, did you check out the stuff I sent you? And they say, no, I'm sorry, I didn't get time. That's when you can just say, okay, look, that's totally cool. It's a lot to get through, and I don't expect you to, everyone's busy. So I'm just going to give you a quick recap of what I sent you. And then, later you can go through and look at it if you want, but really this is the main thing. So summarize it into like 5 points, and then you just knock those out in 2 minutes and they say, oh, that's fantastic. And then you get to the next thing. So you could even be cheeky. I wouldn't recommend, but if you actually like said you sent homework and then you didn't, and then you're like, oh, here's the recap. I mean, you could even do that. I wouldn't recommend doing that because it's dishonest, but I'm just saying the idea of sending the homework and you send them something to go through. And even if they go through the next call and they haven't gone through it, that still gives you leverage now to be able to say, okay, well, this is what I went through. And you can start telling the story and you can just drop it in details. There's such a thing as what's called a red herring in sales. And basically that means it's something that is not really, it's just there. Like it's not even really needed. And a lot of people just chase these red herrings. So an example would be like, do you have a case study of a Fortune 500 company that I can speak with? That's actually a red herring because they're just asking that because they feel that it's necessary. Where if you actually get into that and you say, okay, yeah, what kind of case study are you looking for? Are you looking for something with a pixel for activation? And you start getting deeper and deeper and deeper, you actually find that you can assign a frame for that. So somebody's like, hey, can I speak to one of your clients? Like, no, that's if I guarantee if you're like, yeah, you can speak to all my clients, they're going to go through and then like, can I speak to another client? Can I do this? Or can I do a free trial? Right? It's something where it's like you have to set parameters. So like, hey, can I speak to one of your clients? You just say, look, I don't usually give out my client's contact details, but what are you looking for specifically? And they're like, I just want to see how you're making money with the pixel. And I was like, okay, cool. So You want to see, have you used Pixel before? Have you, um, you know, used anything like this before? And they say, yeah, I've used another company, but it sucked because, the data wasn't accurate, right? And he's like, okay, well, what we'll do is, it sounds like you're saying that, using this pixel, but it was matching all wrong and the data wasn't accurate. Is that correct? And they're like, yeah. And it's like, do you think that the email sequence you had was working, where if you had the accurate data, it would work? And they're like, yeah. And then it's like, all right, well, what I can do is if I can show you how we make ours more accurate than the competitor in terms of how we use two styles of matching and just record a quick video on that, would that make the most sense? It's like, yeah, no, that would actually be great. So now, what started off as like I'm having to like find some, I have to introduce them to like my clients and get all this IP and things like that. Really, it just comes down to they just want to make sure your thing works because they dealt with crap data to begin with. Okay. Poor initial first email response, 500 today, instantly targeting solar company owners in real estate. Now just looking for 5 new listings a month. Email opener. Yeah, I mean, that email opener has been so done. Like that's gonna just get so many unsubscribes. It was taught in a course, like 20. I just know that email open has been done. Like every single agency program is using looking for XYZ per month interested. So I would kind of veer away from that and try something else. Nick, if you're looking at targeting solar owners, right, and you're looking at targeting, well, first of all, are you looking at targeting small solar businesses? Because I can almost guarantee you they're probably not going to reply to those cold emails. Or are you looking to find kind of an MVP there where you can get some bigger solar companies? So 1.5 million rev minimum. Yeah, I mean, send through the email. I'd love to actually check it out and run like a bit of a critique on it. If you could actually just post it in school and just say, hey, here's the email. If you're happy to share it, I'll give you a critique. Because looking for 5 new listings a month, yeah, I mean that's like one of the most common subject lines for if they're trying to close like a service-based business. All right. Well, so I'll jump through and answer some questions and then so let me pause this.